Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my new show that I created called Raised on Wrestling, where we were pretty much as fans, and hopefully I'll have some wrestlers on the show and talk about their wrestling journey. So without further ado, this next person that I'm bringing up to the show is his name is Mcgee, and he worked for TNA Wrestling while they were around. And to welcome to the ring, Mcgee. Hey, Gene, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Gene. So I always my first guest chanted ROW, kind of like ECW. So can I get some ROW chants from you?
Well, I did work for TNA, so mine was more like the TNA, TNA, TNA. And
That
if you
works.
didn't know, you viewers know, I was the towel guy for TNA. I was the guy waving the white towels in the early days of TNA wrestling. So I was like that icon fan that you saw. Like actually, if you go on the free app Pluto TV, Impact Wrestling has their own channel. It's all old school TNA stuff. After they went from Tennessee, but early Universal days, and you can see me waving the white towels from back in the days. So it was TNA, TNA, TNA.
Well, that works too. That's so awesome that you're on there. I don't have Tubi, and I know it's like ad free, so it's I'm glad there's no subscription service or nothing because I'm a cheap person.
Yeah, Pluto TV. It does have ads, but it's no subscription, and it has a ton of channels. And there's, I mean, every genre: comedy, action, horror, reality, sports. It does like live CBS sports broadcast, but more importantly, more pertinent to this channel, it does have like an all Impact Wrestling channel, and I'm not sure if it has Ring of Honor, but I've definitely seen I think other promotions, but definitely Impact Wrestling from like the heyday back when I used to work for TNA. It's all on Pluto TV.
Awesome, good stuff. I'm glad the Forbidden Door is now open and now like Honor No More is there and like the Ring of Honor is coming. Like they're all over AEW and that's gonna be
Yeah.
so good stuff. So
Yeah, I've had a chance to peek in because the AEW they film at Universal, and when they do film, I'll say hi to my friends because actually a lot of the same production crew that work TNA wrestling are AEW. So whenever they're at Universal, I still work at Universal. I'll just pop by and say hi, and almost exact same crew from the cameras to sound to lighting. It's almost the same as TNA. So it feels like like a homecoming, if you will, or a reunion just under a different name and a different banner. But everybody seems to be happy with AEW, so they're happy. I'm happy.
awesome, that's great stuff. I'm so glad that they were able to return because of the whole pandemic thing and that's
Yes,
fantastic.
I mean they
And
are like strong. I've said this from the beginning. Well, a hopeful thinking now it's come true, especially during the height of pandemic. I knew we were all going to come back, and my mantra was the comeback is bigger than the setback, and it's proven itself even more so this year. So much is going on, especially with all the wrestlings, whether it's the WWEs, the AEWs, or no AEW absorbing ROH, and just so much for everybody to do, and it's cool that everybody has a place to go, so it's not just one and one only. It's good to have a lot of wrestling promotions. That's why I'm a fan of everybody. It's not just I only watch this or only this. If you're a real wrestling fan, you want wrestling to succeed. You want to see all these brands succeed because competition definitely it breeds innovation. So everybody needs everybody. AEW, you know, the Impact's still around. Of course, you have WWE with the Raw, SmackDown, and NXT brand. It's good to have all types of wrestling. Even support your local indies too. And, everybody has an indie promotion in town. Support local wrestling because if you're a wrestling fan, you want them to succeed, and this is how you do it, just by supporting your wrestlers and supporting your locals. But it's cool that you have this platform to do so.
absolutely, 100%. Like I always bring a sign with me to wrestling events. So I'm like an old school guy, and like I was like my most recent post was about me bringing my please sign my sign to an ECW event,
Yes,
and they all walked up to me and signed it. And now, like when you said support the locals, my buddy's a wrestler, and he's in Jacksonville.
yes,
He was a ref, and so his name is Roger. So I put
yes.
Ref Roger Rocks on the
Hey,
thing in black and white, and then I held my sign up, and he's just like he was like out of character a couple times whenever he looked up my way, and I just held the sign up. So it's
Yes, I love it. I love that. My friend, he's actually an indie wrestler here in Orlando. He goes by the name of Simon Says. And just a few weeks ago, he had a program, if you will, or did some promos, I should say, with Jerry the King Lawler. And it was the coolest thing because my buddy Simon, he's actually from Colombia, and he learned how to speak English from watching professional wrestling. So he's a huge fan of Undertaker, Stone Cold, those guys. But of course Jerry Lawler, because Simon, he started out as a manager, as a heel manager, because he could talk. He's got a way with words, so he loves, like the Ric Flairs and that type of just that braggadocious, just saying the most outlandish things. But his in-ring work is as amazing as his promos, and it really, really, really shone when he got a chance to go toe to toe with Jerry the King Lawler, and it's just like my best friends in the ring with the Hall of Famer, with the legend. And in June, he actually has a match, a one-on-one, Simon Says versus Jerry the King Lawler, and it's the coolest thing. I mean, it's a stacked card in Orlando. I forget the name of the promotion, but it's in Orlando. It's just cool that that's my friend. That's somebody. So I did a little bit of a ring announcing uh, back in 2007, 2008. And my first ring announcing, like legit ring announcing, was in York, Pennsylvania. And my buddy Simon, it was his first match because he was trained by the Dudleys. He went to 3D Training Academy, and we all got a spot in this place in York, Pennsylvania, because my buddy was booking it. And I'll never forget that because listening to his theme music in his room, it was called Simon Says by Drain STH, which Simon Diamond used back in the day. And Simon Diamond gave Simon Says permission to, use my music and mannerisms. He got the blessing. But I'll never forget, we would listen to his music in his room or in his car. Like, man, one day this is going to be your theme music. And then it actually happened. We were in Pennsylvania at the West York Fire Hall. And I remember I was a ring announcer, and hearing his music hit, I'm like, oh, this is real. This is it. He's really doing it. And funny thing is, on that show, I didn't realize at the time, but my buddy Ray Alexander, who's a wrestler up in York, PA, Adam Cole was on that show, and Rich Swann, and there was quite a few that are names now that I was a ring announcer for when they were in it. That's why you support your indies. These guys, nobody knew who they were, and now they're pretty big names. And I didn't know. I wish I still had my index cards because my friend was like, "Hey, these guys, you were their early ring announcer." But I was just in awe of just my friend is finally living his dream, and this was 2007, 2008. And now here he is about to face the legend of Jerry King Lawler, and it's just one of the coolest moments just of life. You never know where it's going to take you, and the wrestling business, you never know where it's going to go. That's the crazy thing about wrestling. It's predictable and unpredictable at the same time, and it's kind of cool that I have like an in and an out, if you will. Like feel like an outsider, but I have been embraced by the wrestling community, and it's been just an amazing feeling of having these top wrestlers you've seen on whatever you've seen them on that I'm friends with, that I can text or hang out with, and it's being embraced by the wrestling community that I grew up watching, as a kid, and I got to be part of the scene. And start out as a fan. Like we all start off as fans. We all start off as fans. I mean, no matter like who you are at one. I mean, if you're in the business, chances are you watched it or you know about it. And even though I was more in the outskirts, I worked with the audience. I was the guy that recruited audience for TNA Wrestling at Universal Studios because it was free admission. That was one of the stipulations that TNA had. Universal had for TNA. Like if you use our sound stages, the admission has to be free. So I was one of the people that recruited audience, and then I became an in-ring warm-up host, right? Hype the crowd up before the cameras roll, and then I started becoming like a liaison for the wrestlers after the show when they would do in-ring meet and greets. I was there. I basically walk them down to the ring. I was pretty much in communication with marketing department and the wrestlers, let them know that I'll be with them. I'll walk them to the ring, walk them out after the show, and that's how I really got to know the wrestlers. Really got to know, like, okay, we could just talk like regular people. Hey, I'm Gene. I'll be with you. Take you down to the ring, and then I'll bring you out. And it's been an amazing ride ever since. I tell people I feel like Forrest Gump. Like, I didn't set out to work in wrestling. I like wrestling. Obviously, I watch it, but I never really thought I'd be in it until TNA wrestling came around back in 2004. I want to say, and I saw Jimmy Mouth of the South Heart, legendary Mountain South Hart, with this megaphone at Universal Studios. I was like, that's Jimmy Hart. That's kind of cool. It's recruiting an audience. And then next thing I know, weeks later, they're handing me his megaphone. They're like, hey, you have a good voice. Talk this megaphone. Get people to come to TNA Wrestling. And that's where it started. And Jimmy Hart was like, you're really good at this. Keep it up. And so I have Jimmy Hart to thank. Jimmy Hart was my mentor. He's the one that's like, you're really good. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I was still trying to get into acting at Universal, and which has now happened. But back then, I was still auditioning. I wasn't getting anywhere, and he always kept my head up. He was like, "Don't worry, you're good at this. Just keep at it." And those wise words from Jimmy Hart kept me going. And to this day, I'm like one of the MCs for Universal Studios. Yeah, MC'd at Walt Disney World. I've MC'd currently at SeaWorld. But I've had that encouragement, and I got a lot of my chops from audience recruiting at TNA Wrestling, warm-up host, and just being encouraged by Jimmy Hart. And I can never speak highly enough about that legend that is the Mouth of the South. So always cool.
Absolutely, indeed. And when you mentioned Jerry the King Lawler, it reminded me of his fight against Andy Kaufman.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so my friend Simon is recreating that. My friend Simon actually has the similar shirt that Andy Kaufman wore when he went up against Jerry the King Lawler. So he's kind of doing the Andy Kaufman gimmick with Jerry Lawler. So yeah, it's that. So you know exactly what's going on. So with Andy Kaufman, wrestling women, Jerry Lawler's like, why don't you wrestle somebody that actually can wrestle? Why don't you pick up somebody your own size? So Simon is doing the same thing. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, you got to, you see something you grow up watching, and now you're a part of it. Like Simon is like now Andy Kaufman for this generation for the indie circuit, and Jerry Lawler is like, if you want to be Andy Kaufman, I'll treat you like Andy Kaufman, and he definitely laid into Simon. And the cool thing is, during that match, so Jerry Lawler had a match with Scott Steiner, and then Simon came out during their match to cut another promo because he couldn't get enough of Jerry Lawler, and then Jerry Lawler and Scott Steiner both turned on Simon Says and both gave him a beating. And I'm like, my friend is getting beat up by Scott Steiner and Jerry Lawler. Now, normally under normal circumstances in society, if your friend is getting beat up by somebody, your first instinct is not to clap or be happy. You'll be like, you want to go in and help, or like, what are you doing to my friend? But it was the craziest moment seeing my friend get beat down. And I was like, this is great. This is awesome. This is exactly what he wants, what's supposed to happen. Two legends are just giving him the business. As Lawler said, if you want to act like Kaufman, I'll treat you like Kaufman. And, he beat him down like he did Kaufman. So and it's fun. I mean, it's cool with supporting independent wrestlers. They have so much freedom to do things. And then, like I said, you might see some wrestlers you might have seen on TV back in the day. Now you can see them right there, and they're like accessible and very fan friendly, and they know that the fans are the reason why they're doing this. So I always say, support your local indies. Like I said, you'll see some, rising stars. You'll see some legends, and your next door neighbor or your coworker, mild mannered by day is superstar at night. So that's, the indies though. So I can't push that enough. It's just really cool that we have that, and it's back. Like you said, we're back. We're back in full force.
Absolutely.
Everybody's thriving.
Indeed. As your friend was getting beat up by two legends, did you yell out? Did you chant, "This is awesome"?
He was feeling it. He was feeling it. Like, I know in his head. Actually, I talked to him, and yeah, he was like, "This is one of the coolest moments." He had a lot of cool moments in his life. Like, he worked security for TNA Wrestling too. He was security back in the day. That's we initially met at TNA, sitting in the audience, and but yeah, he got his start as security, so he got a chance to, learn firsthand from all these legendary wrestlers, and of course from the Dudleys. So so he's had a lot of cool moments in his career, but this is like, because he's getting towards the end, he's gonna start wrapping up because he has a family now, and he's hosting a very successful trivia show in Orlando called the Simon Time Trivia Show. So he's a trivia host and he's a wrestler. And one of the coolest moments that Jerry Lawler was cutting a promo on Simon. He's like, Simon, I have some trivia for you. And then he asked Simon a question. I was like, how cool is this that Jerry the King Lawler knows that my buddy Simon is a trivia host? Of course, he used it against him, but still, it was still cool. It was just like, yeah, this is awesome. My friend's being berated, being beat down. And it was like, yeah, you wanted this. It is awesome. It's like, you're clapping for your friend. No, it's wrestling. It's wrestling, and this is what we do. We brought a first timer to the show. Actually, a friend of ours that's only knows Simon from trivia, and he's never watched live wrestling. Our buddy James from Seattle, Washington. He's an actor, like a theater actor, a comedic actor. But I'm like, yeah, you come see wrestling. He's like, I'd love to, and he was just amazed about just so much going on. So much coolness, and to see his trivia host on this microphone just, he's a heel, so he's gonna cut a promo on the crowd. He wants to make sure that nobody likes him, but sometimes he's so good at being a heel, he's so funny, you almost like him because he's so good. It's like, I'm supposed to hate this guy, but he said the funniest insult I've heard in my life. And so he has a delicate balance of creative insults. It's going to make people laugh, but remember, you still need them to boo you, and he plays the audience like a fiddle, and it's like a master class in promo. So yeah, promo. Simon says, look at his promos, and he can turn it on like that. You can be like, hey Simon, cut a promo this Sunday, Royal Rumble. It's going to be you. It's going to be name any wrestler, go. And boom. That's how you know you have it. That's how you know you are where you're supposed to be if you could just do it like that. He doesn't have to be like, all right, roll cameras, and then this Sunday, that kind of. I'm not going to try to do what Simon does because he's a master at promos. So it's always good to see promos. The great thing about wrestling, the promos are the business. The better your promos, the less you have to do in the ring. The more people love you or hate you, the less work you have to do. You can do the most simplest moves. That's why our most famous wrestlers of all time, the Rocks, the Stone Colds, the Steve Austins, the John Cenas, they were not the best wrestlers, but they were the most charismatic. They cut the best promos out of anybody, and they didn't have to do as much as others that have to do the backflips or the extremes. Here's the things, I do like lucha style. I love the flips and I love the extremes. That's my style, but I understand promos is where the money is, really. That's where you have the longevity of your wrestling career. You better your promos, the longer you'll be in the business, and the less you have less wear and tear in your body. I had my former roommate. I don't know if I didn't mention this to you, but my former roommate, he was Robbie E in TNA Wrestling, but now he's the Robert Stone brand in NXT. So we went from wrestler for TNA to manager for NXT. And I asked him, like, Robbie, how are you okay with that? Are you okay with not really wrestling that much? He was like, dude, this is great. I don't get to, tear up my body so much. I mean, he's still in shape. He runs his own gym, F4 gym out in Baldwin Park here in Orlando with his wife, Tara. But he stays in shape. He stays in wrestling shape, but he doesn't have to take bumps night in and night out. But he's so charismatic, he doesn't really need to do much. So he's lending his charisma to some of the younger talents that he's able to have a stable as part of the Robert Stone brand. And it just goes to show, yeah, he didn't have to do, the crazy jumping off really high things. He could just, talk his talk with his stable of wrestlers, and then let them go at it. And watch him reap all the rewards. So it's kind of cool learning the ins and outs of wrestling. And I'm a performer, so I love to see obviously the performance aspects and the psychology of why they do certain things and how they get a crowd just going and why you do things a certain way. And it's very theatrical because I have a theater background, so I see a lot of theater elements, and it's just a blast just seeing it play out and seeing people firsthand you've talked to or hung out with, or like I said, visit roommates with the wrestler, and it's so cool though. So once again, I'm so glad you have this platform to talk about wrestling. I don't get to talk about it often because I'm not in wrestling so much anymore. So it's cool. I'm more like a passing casual fan. I'm not into it as much as I was, but I still try to keep up some stuff here and there, and still try to talk about things.
Abs-
And but I'm glad you got this stuff.
Indeed, and why I got this like in the beginning was like I emailed TNA like back in 2008
Yeah.
because they were looking for a broadcast intern, and I never got a reply back, but my I got an internship out in LA instead, and so that worked out, and so I wanted to come back full circle and do this because I this is kind of like broadcast and wrestling, because
Yes.
so it's like it's perfect because now I can connect with fans and hopefully fellow like our wrestlers as well, like from the indie to the pros. And I remembered like when we talked last on a different my alter ego Surath, we talked about Simon Says in our previous one, like
Yes.
way back when. And so I'm so glad that I knew that trivia was coming in, and I'm so glad it was the same Simon Says that you spoke of.
Yes.
It was. I was gonna ask you about that too, and so that's so cool. And man, and it's so neat that he got to work with Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, and
Yes, he did.
yeah, it's so cool. And I usually have my mask on because like I have this Andy Kaufman thing. It's like a hockey mask that's on your shirt, like.
Oh yeah.
But I'm at a Starbucks, so I didn't want to scare people. So
I got you. I got you. Right. Yeah, wearing a hockey mask in a coffee shop. Yeah.
yep, and the whole Andy Kaufman thing, like I did stand up my first time, and it was in L.A. And I
Okay.
dressed up as my superhero alter ego because I was so scared and so nervous for the first time ever, and
Of
so it was
course.
a brand new venture. And I go and change into from all Wu Tang to I took my mask off, threw my Rage Against the Machine shirt on from the outside of the car, and I come back in. The host goes, "Hey, do you have 5 more minutes?" I'm like, "I don't have 5 more minutes," and
Oh.
I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, "So you're playing an Andy Kaufman on me, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yep, I'm playing an Andy Kaufman on yes." and
Yes.
and when you said like the promos are everything, like that helps balance out the from the wrestling. I
Yeah.
agree 100%. It's kind of like stand up. It's like I'm a very quiet comic and like very like easy going on there, and I don't like I'm not really out there like yelling and like because comics have different energies.
Yes.
And I'm like the most laid back one, and I don't do any like the crowd work reminds me of like the wrestling moves, like you need
Okay.
that crowd to do like this is awesome, and whenever you get
Yes.
back to the crowd, and I'm not like that at all. Like sometimes I do that, like and I get the audience involved, and that was fun. And you're right. Like I look forward to like the promos so much because
Yeah.
it's the storytelling aspect of it.
Yes.
Like they storytell in the ring, but when you put
Right.
words along with the action, it's like it's perfect. It's like you know where their beef is from, and when they build it up to like, for example, like AEW's like history, like they only do like a couple like pay per views a month, but for that or a couple pay per views a year, but they
Yeah.
take these other ones to like build a story between like the heel and the face, and they did that with like back in the day too, whether it was with Superfly Jimmy Snuka and Roddy Piper and like
Oh yes.
and Kane and Undertaker, or
Oh
Kane and or Undertaker and Mankind, and The Rock
yeah.
and Mankind. It's like with this Rock and Sock
The
connection.
Rock and Sock connection.
Absolutely, and it's like the story has to be them. That's what I look forward to the most, all the storytelling. And
Yeah.
so, and as while you were with TNA, like who are some of your favorite wrestlers that you got to work with?
Yeah. So my top favorite wrestlers that I got to work alongside as far as coming down to the ring and kind of having great interactions. in no particular order. Um, Mr. Kennedy slash Mr. Anderson. That guy Ken Anderson. Whenever I had Ken Anderson as my I would know in the beginning before the show starts, like, hey, no, here's a wrestler you're gonna have. Make sure you get with them. So Mr. Anderson or Ken Anderson or Kennedy, however the viewers know him, I know that he was gonna give every fan an individual reaction. It wasn't just hey, how are you? Smile. Hey, how are you? He gave them like individual attention. His charisma's off the charts, and one of the most, like I said, kindest. Uh, there's the story that I'll tell. So I won't name any names to protect some wrestlers, but I guess there was a wrestler having, I guess, a bad day, and I happened to be, I was like in the line of sight, but I was charging my phone. This was back in 2009, 2010. I remember I was back. The show was going on. I was backstage charging my phone, and this wrestler who I will not name just kind of bust in the room in this trailer and was just angry at someone. Not angry at me, but angry at stuff going on. And like legit, there's no cameras around. This is somebody venting, and I knew right away I need to step out of this room. There were other wrestlers in this room. They were kind of watching the monitors, and but one of the wrestlers in that room was Ken Anderson. But I unplugged my phone. I stepped out. I'm like, okay, I'm hearing things I'm not supposed to hear. You know what? I took no personal because he said, hey, you need to get out of this room right now. I was like, yep. Nothing of it. I thought nothing of it. The next day, because we did 2-day tapings, the next day I'm coming to the sound stages. Ken Anderson sees me, walks up to me, shakes my hand. He's like, hey, I want to apologize on behalf of my colleague for the way he spoke to you yesterday. And I'm like, oh, no, Ken, it's okay. I took no offense. I understood he was just venting, and I was unfamiliar ears, and I'm not a wrestler, so certain things they don't want people to hear, and I get it. And he's like, no. He just spoke very aggressively, and he didn't have to do that. So on behalf of my colleague, I want to apologize. And he stuck out his hand. And I'm like, Ken Anderson. I mean, I shook his hand, and so that was one of like the top moments, you know, from a wrestler. One of my favorites, I just say backstage, Ken Anderson. And my other favorite is Jeff Hardy. Like to this day, me, him, and his wife, we still have like a group text going on. We'll text each other so often. But Jeff Hardy, one of the most kindest human beings you will ever meet. Whenever somebody says they're a fan of Jeff Hardy, I'm like, he's a good guy to be a fan of. One of the many highlights I've seen from Jeff Hardy when it comes to my time dealing with him, dealing with the fans. So I was walking him down to the ring like I do, like after the show, they're doing the meet and greets. And if the Jeff Hardy meet and greets, it was a long line. A lot of people bought tickets to take photos with Jeff Hardy. And the people taking photos, it was a third-party vendors. I believe they're called Color Vision. They work through Universal. And I remember the boss, the lead, he had a son, you know, working, kind of running at the time, running the memory card from the ring out to the print area, because it's back in, that's how long ago it was when they had to kind of switch out memory cards. And I remember his son was like a teenager, but his son was asking me, he was like, hey, do you think I could get a Jeff Hardy t-shirt? And I'm like, oh, we get a really big discount at the merch table. Yeah, just let them know you're with us. You get a pretty good deal. And he was like, no, do you think I could get the shirt that Jeff Hardy's wearing? Because Jeff Hardy had, you know, one of his shirts, I forget one. It might have been the Charismatic Enigma shirt or something like that. And I'm like, you know what? Because I was kind of knew Jeff Hardy's being a friendly guy. I was like, you know what? Why don't you ask Jeff after we finish our photos? Just ask him. And then so doing photos, and then time is up. I'm like, all right, Jeff, you're all done. And the kid looks at me. I was like, yeah, go ask him. And then he's like, and Jeff, right before Jeff stepped out of the ring, he's like, hey, Jeff, can I get your shirt? And Jeff kind of looked for a second. He's like, sure. Jeff literally took his shirt off and handed it to this kid. I mean, he's like a teenager, but he's handed it. Like literally took the shirt off his back just because he asked. And now this kid has a Jeff Hardy shirt. I'm sure he's a Jeff Hardy fan for life. And just like interactions like that. Jeff Hardy and Ken Anderson are my top as far as seeing them interact with fans and just seeing their personalities, especially hanging out with Jeff, like out like at restaurants. We'll go to like restaurants out in town in the area, and of course Jeff Hardy is very recognizable, and he will do this thing where people will come up to him, "Hey Jeff, oh, I'm a huge fan. I remember when I saw you, the Dudley Boys, and Edge and Christian, the ladders match, and oh, it was the most." And the great thing about Jeff Hardy, he's not gonna shoo you away. He's not gonna say, "Oh yeah, thanks," and then going about it. He'll ask you. He's like, "Hey, what'd you think about it? What's your favorite part?" He'll actually engage in conversation, and I'm just like in awe. Like, I mean, clearly this dude's famous. People know him, and he doesn't act like it's an inconvenience. The only thing I remember when we would hang out with the family, I remember the only thing they did ask is not to take pictures of his kids. He's like, take pictures of me, and then Beth, his wife, to take pictures of us, but to leave the kids out of it. And very respectful, and fans are respectful. They do respect that. So Jeff Hardy, like top notch, Ken Anderson, and I mean there are numerous names, but those are, I guess, the more famous names. Another famous name that was really cool, really professional, was Kurt Angle. As you know, Kurt Angle is a gold winning medalist from the '96 Olympics in Atlanta, won a gold medal in wrestling, and became one of the top professional wrestlers of all time. Uh, when I had Kurt Angle as the liaison to take him down to the ring, I'll never forget when I would talk to him. I'm like, "Hey, Kurt, I'm Gene. I'll be with you." And Kurt would be like, "I'm gonna be in this seat, right? Whatever seat was backstage." He's like, "I'm gonna sit right here, and you let me know when you need me. I will not move until you come get me." Such a professional. And sure enough, when it was time, Kurt was there. He's like, "Are we ready?" I'm like, "Yep." All right, here we go. So we did that a couple times. Now there was a one time when I got pulled to do something else, and it was during that time at the end of the show. And I'm like, "Hey, Kurt, I'm not going to be with you for this." He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I know what to do. I'll just come out whenever." And he did. A consummate professional. But my all-time favorite story out of all of this, and we referenced him earlier, was Mick Foley. Let me tell you how awesome Mick Foley is with the fans. So I'm backstage with Mick, and they're getting everything set up. Now the reason why I'm with them, and they don't just come out on their own, because at the end of the show, everybody's off headphones. Like there's no more production crew because everybody's wrapping up for the night. So the reason why I'm there at what they call the gorilla position, which is right before you come out to the ramp. I was there to give eye contact to, at the time, SoCal Val. SoCal Val was one that would introduce them. So, and there was nobody on headphones. So I would let her know she could see me from the gorilla position. I would give her a thumbs up. The audience can't really see me because it was at an angle. It was at the angle, that ramp. So I would give her a thumbs up, and she was like, "All right, come into the ring. Let's hear it for her." Then whichever wrestler, then I would walk them down to the ring. And then once they do the thing, I'd walk them back out. So that's why I was there, just to let the wrestlers know and let Val know they're clear to walk down, because that means everything's all set up and ready for them. So anyway, back to Mick Foley. So I'm with Mick. It's just me and him back there. And Mick, ECW legend. He's a legend of any wrestling promotions he's ever been a part of. He's a legend, and he got that legendary status by doing the most crazy moves we were talking about earlier. Even though he could cut promos like nobody's business, but he would still, throw himself from the highest place ever, because he said, "I can't jump very high, but I can jump from high places." So there's nothing Mankind, Mick Foley, Dude Love, with a Cactus Jack, whatever you know him as, he would do anything and even put his body through anything, just to make the fans happy. With that said, that catches up to you. So Mick Foley, he, was, limping around. I mean, you could see like he's put his time in. He put his body through a lot. So I'll never forget. We're backstage. um, getting ready to walk him out. Now, the gorilla position backstage at TNA at the time, it was about maybe 4 steps up. They're really long steps, 4 steps up maybe, and then you go up to the ramp, and then the crowd can see you. And there's no handrails or anything. It's just giant long steps, long and narrow steps, I should say, about 4 of them. And I see Mick looking at those 4 stairs, and he's like, I don't know if I could do these stairs. Just he's in so much pain at almost all times because he's broken like every bone in his body, at least. And I'm like, well, hey, Mick, why don't we just walk around behind the announcers area where Mike Tenay and Don West do their announcement? There's like a back area where we can kind of circumnavigate the ramp. So if we're looking at the ramp here, we can go to the right, go around, and kind of snake our way around behind the announcers' tables. And then, the here's the thing is we would not be walking down the ramp. We'd be walking parallel to the ramp inside the guardrails and then up to the ring. So I was like, Mick, we could do that. And then he was like, nope, nope. He's like, the fans out there are going to expect me to walk down this ramp. So just give me a moment. I can do this. Just give me a moment. And he's, I mean, laboring up these stairs. I'm like, and I'm standing by. There's no guardrail, so I kind of have my hands out, like, I don't know if I need to, because I don't want a legend to fall on my watch. Like if Mick Foley falls, I want him to fall on me. Like I can take it. So I'm like, I don't know where to put my hands. I'm like close by, but he doesn't need it. He's like, just give me a moment. Just I got this. So he gets up those stairs, takes a breather, and then he's down that ramp like none of that just happened. Like soon as those fans saw him, he was able to walk up the steps of the ring like nothing happened, and it was almost like watching a magic trick. It was like watching a magician. I'm just like, oh my goodness, Mick Foley. You talking about doing something for the fans? Like he didn't have to do that. He could have easily gone down the side. It would have been fine. He could have rolled into the ring. He's like, no, these fans are expecting me to walk down this ramp, and I'm going to do that. And he did it. And I was nobody else was around. It was just me and Mick. Like, I'm the only one that had that story that I can attest to how awesome and how fan-friendly and how just, he does this for the people. And I can't speak highly enough. So those are my top, highlight stories. Now, there's a ton of other stories I could talk about, but when it comes to the most recognizable names, and and one more story, Hulk Hogan. Great story was Hulk Hogan. I have a few cool stories. One of them though, so it was a pay-per-view. It was a Sunday. So I mentioned earlier how I would recruit audience. I would recruit audience from the park. But during the pay-per-view Sunday, we didn't have to recruit audience because a lot of people showed up. So I didn't have to do much during the day, but just do the audience warm-up. So I'm looking to help out backstage. If anybody needs anything, I don't have anything to do for an hour or so. And one of the talent coordinators, Lauren, who eventually became my boss, but Lauren, she had to get autographs on this turnbuckle for charity. So she's like, hey, I have to get Hulk Hogan to sign the turnbuckle. If you want to come with me, that'd be cool. I'm like, okay, I'll come with you. So I remember we go to Hulk Hogan's office in the trailer in the soundstage area. It was so weird because me and Lauren walk into his office. It felt like we were gonna go see the Wizard of Oz. We're walking in there. I was like, oh, this is almost kind of intimidating. You see Hulk Hogan's name on the door, and knock. He's like, come in. And Lauren's like, hey Hulk, we have this the charity turnbuckle. He's like, oh yeah, bring it in, come on in. And he signed it, and within minutes, he just talking about his most recent back surgery. He's like, oh brother, man, and he just lifts up his shirt and showing. This is within minutes of meeting the legend that is Hulk Hogan. He's talking about his back surgery, and he has his phone out. And man, look at the surgery. Look at my back here, and look at his brother. Oh man. So I was like, he really talks like that. First of all, he calls everybody's brother, and he's talking about his many back surgeries within minutes of meeting this guy. And it was just such a cool, interesting moment while he's signing and telling us the stories of him, hurting his back. I was just like, and we were just talking about earlier about how much wrestling takes a toll on your body, no matter who you are. Like Hogan was not known for being a high flyer. You know, he wasn't known for doing anything crazy, but it catches up to you. I mean, that leg drop he was doing. I mean, it's still gonna take a lot of shock to your spine just doing that, or him, picking up Andre the Giant. Who knows, how many muscles he could have tore doing that. But anyway, it's kind of a cool, like, humble moment that it was like, hey, that was it was a relatable human moment. Him talking about his back surgeries and just, oh man, but he still loves what he does and signs it, and we're on our way. And I was like, that was a really cool experience with Hulk Hogan, among many other cool experiences I've had with him. But that's cool one I kind of like to share. And that's all because of TNA wrestling. TNA is amazing.
Indeed, and when you spoke of Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, my buddy, my previous guest, his name is Minnie. That's his nickname. He performed stand-up at the Sausage Castle, and in the Sausage Castle, they have the WrestleMania 3 or 4 ring where Andre and Hulk Hogan wrestled on, and where the Body Slam happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he got to go on there, and he goes, "They probably haven't watched the canvas in a long time either, so he could
Yeah,
tell."
absolutely. Yeah, my buddy, he used to be Popeye at Islands of Adventure. He's since passed on, but I had a really awesome story with him. So he had the program from that WrestleMania that had Hulk and Andre doing the face to face. So it was passed down to him from his dad. His dad got it, uh, and he was like, "Hey, would you be able to get Hogan to autograph this for me?" I'm like, well, I can ask because like I work for TNA. Like we don't ask for autographs as a Universal employee, but on the days I work for TNA, um, that's the only time I did. I actually never did an autograph ever. That was the only moment, only exception, because Tony's a great human, and but I did talk to Hogan first. I'm like, hey Hulk, I got a buddy of mine. He does Popeye on his adventure. A huge fan. He has a program from you and Andre. Would you be able to sign that if I brought that in? He was like, brother, if you have it on you, I'll sign it right now. I was like, oh, okay. Well, give me a week or so, and I just wanted to know if it was okay. And then a week or two later, Tony gave me the program, and he also had a lunchbox that had Hogan, the old Hogan lunchbox. That he's like, I know this is asking a lot, but would you be able to sign this too? I was like, well, let me see, I'll take it. So I'm working TNA, I'm doing my thing, and then we had just a break in the action, and we're in the sound station. So I was like, Hulk, remember that uh, the program? He's like, yeah, you got it. Here, I'll sign it. And then he was like, he even said this. He was like, make sure you use a blue or give me like a blue Sharpie because it looks better than a black Sharpie or something. I don't know what his reasoning was, but I had a blue Sharpie, and he signed the program. He signed the lunchbox. And he was like, "This is gonna get your friends' kids through college. It's gonna be worth a lot of money when I die." I was like, "Oh my gosh, don't speak like that." But he's like, I mean, Hogan knows his worth. And then I gave it to him. My friend was like, the coolest moment. Like I said, my friend has since passed unexpectedly a few years ago. He passed on, but I'm glad I was able to provide that moment. And that's the only time ever I, had like an autograph moment, but it was for a friend. And it was a really cool moment. Um, another cool moment that nobody ever knows. Okay, I'm glad I have a platform to tell the story. And I didn't tell the story, I think, the last time we talked regarding Jeff Hardy. So this is during when Universal was doing Halloween Horror Nights. So it was kind of a weird night because the park closes early, so I can't be in the park recruiting an audience. I have to be out at a certain time. But I'll never forget. Do you remember the movie Child's Play?
Yeah, but Chuck,
Chucky, the original one, the little kid that played Andy. His name at the moment is escaping me. I'll remember in just a moment. But he lives in Florida. But I remember I saw him just walking around the park, and I was like, "Hey, I've seen you before." It was like I was like, you were Andy in Child's Play. He was like, yeah, I was. And I was standing next to the A-frame, the TNA Wrestling. He was like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm recruiting an audience for TNA Wrestling. And he sees Jeff Hardy's picture. He's like, is that Jeff Hardy? I was like, that is Jeff Hardy, and Jeff Hardy's actually wrestling tonight. You should go in and see it. He's like, and the actor, I can't think of his name right now. He had like a girl with him, but I know he had somebody with him. He's like, I'll come back though, but that'd be cool to see Jeff Hardy. Well, just by chance, I had Jeff Hardy's number, and I'm like, hey Jeff, remember the kid from Chucky? No. And he's like, yeah. He's like, he's here and he wants to see you. He's like, Jeff's like, that's cool. He's like, Jeff's like, I have a match, but I can meet up with them after. I'm like, okay, cool. But then I remember I had to go out to City Walk because they closed the park, and I was like, man, because the actor never came back. So I was like, well, I guess I'll never see him again. So I'm now in City Walk by Hard Rock Cafe and Blue Man Group, recruiting audience. Just by chance, he walks by. I was like, hey, it's you again. He was like, is this still going on? I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let me walk you in. Let me escort you in. And I was messaging some people. I was like, hey, the kid from Chucky is here. They're like, yeah, we got a VIP seat over by the announcers. So sent him by the announcers. Jeff Hardy did his thing. And as soon as Jeff Hardy came back, I kind of walked him back there so they get to meet each other. And I'm like, this is really cool. I actually set up a meeting between Jeff Hardy and the lead of Child's Play. Now, I'll never forget the Universal Production Group. Now, I have a lot of goodwill with them. They were like, hey, Gene, don't do that again unless you clear with us first. Like, it's fine that you did it. I mean, but we do have to clear that first before you do anything like that, especially backstage. A lot of people run in backstage, a lot of production people. But the fact that they know me and I'm a hard worker and I don't do things like this normally, they're like, we'll definitely let this slide, but just next time, just give us a heads up. And there was never next time. That was a once in a lifetime moment. And there's pictures, but the pictures I think only exist on that actor's phone. And maybe I don't know if Jeff Hardy's phone. Like, I didn't even think to take mine out to take photos of this moment that I helped put together. But yeah, I'll get a chance to bring together like these two. They're both fans of each other. Jeff Hardy loves the Chucky movies, and the kid loves Jeff Hardy. Like to all grow. I keep saying kid. He has to be in his 30s by now. But yeah, I was able to make that happen. But yeah, look up the lead actor from Child's Play who played Andy, the kid. I thought I was gonna remember his name while I was talking, but I didn't. But I'm sure as soon as he finishes the interview, I'm like, oh right, his name was. Can't think of it.
His name was Alex Vincent.
There it is. Yes, thank you. Yes,
Absolutely, and
Alex.
like in the vein of horror, like with your Friday the 13th shirt as Jason Voorhees as Debo, I have Pinhead from Hellbound
Yeah, cause
and Hellraiser.
yeah, 'cause you worked with Clive Barker, right?
Yep. So that's my other internship that I got instead of TNA. So that's why I had to move out to LA to go do it. So everything worked out in my favor, I guess.
Yeah, but that's still Clive, one of the masters of horror is Clive Barker and the Pinhead. And you said you got to meet Doug Bradley too, right?
Yep. And Kirsty Cotton gave me the name of my alter ego's name, Sarath. And we had lunch together at a vegan restaurant
Okay.
on Santa Monica Boulevard, and that's how I got my name. And I took I met Chatter as well, and
Ah,
Butterball. Me and him were really close. We went and rode the Santa Monica roller coaster together, and I went on tour for stand up, and he filmed my set in Atlanta at the Relapse Theater. So we're pretty close. It's
now
pretty.
do you let people know like when you're doing stand up, like who's in the audience? You give them like a shout out or anything?
I don't.
Okay.
I let everyone like know like the hints on my vest because it's like my life story.
Ah,
But my buddies, they always when they introduce me to the stage, they name drop Clive for me or the Wu Tang
yes.
Clan and stuff. I'm like, you guys, this is nuts. I'm trying to blow my cover over here. So, but if they go to
Yeah.
my website, they'll read the whole story and stuff like that. But when I and when you talked about Jeff Hardy jumping off the ladder for the versus Edge and Christian and the Dudley Boys and Mick Foley like or Mankind from like getting thrown off by the Undertaker on
The Hell in a Cell.
yeah and it took me back to like Mr. Kennedy's shirt design that I still hold true in my head and like I always repeat myself too. It's like pro wrestling is real, people are fake, and
Yeah, is that like Ken Anderson?
Yeah, Ken Anderson. That's right. It's Mr. Ken Anderson. I took his name from the WWE days, but Ken Anderson for
Kennedy.
sure. Yep, yep. And so and I'm glad that he said that, because it's like I'm a firm believer that people go through hell, no pun intended, for what they love. And it was so awesome. And when you spoke of Kurt Angle, like, my journalism is, uh, unbiased and in integrity. And like, one of his three eyes was integrity in WWE. And
Integrity, intelligence, and intensity. Yeah.
absolutely. And I was so fortunate to see him wrestle in, like, my very first pay per view event was in Denver, and it was for WWE Vengeance, and it was a SmackDown pay per view. And I got to see him main event it with Brock Lesnar and the Big Show, who is Paul White now. So I got to
Yeah.
see the Undertaker cut his American Badass promo on his motorcycle. Like, they were shooting that beforehand, and all that jazz. But that's the place that I brought my first sign, that "Please Sign My Sign," and nobody
Oh,
signed it. But when I took it to the ECW house show, they signed it. So it was when they got bought out by WWE. But like,
okay.
yeah, so it all connects and all that good stuff.
It all comes together. It all blends perfectly.
Absolutely, one hundred
Uh,
percent. Oh man, I love hearing your WWE stories, and how, like, Jimmy Hart and was your mentor.
for
And
TNA, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
He was the first one to pay me out of his pocket. So I was doing all this stuff for free in the beginning. So I would get off work. At the time, I was working at Nickelodeon Studios at Universal, and Nickelodeon Studios is where Blue Man is. Well, Blue Man's now since closed, but at the time, Nick Studios was right next to the TNA studio. So I would literally get off work and just from Nickelodeon and just go right on over to TNA. But so I already had a job, so it's not like I needed the money. So when I was doing the megaphone stuff, I was doing it for free. I was after work, I'd get on the megaphone, and after a while, Jimmy Hart was like, "Hey, we got to start paying you or something." So he would maybe pay me like $20 out of his pocket or something, or he would buy me lunch. I remember we were eating at a place called Cafe La Bamba at Universal Orlando, which is now VIP experience. You have to have a VIP tour to eat there. But back then, it was open for anybody. And I remember we had lunch. He's like, I got to do something for you. And then, now I wasn't looking for anything. I was just happy to be able to contribute to this wrestling show. So he bought me lunch, and then he give me money out of his pocket. Then eventually, I became on the payroll, and that was kind of cool. Getting checks to my house and seeing TNA wrestling on the checks. That was, that'll never get old. There, seeing the TV shows with checks addressed to you.
That's so
And but yeah, so Jimmy Hart was the first one to actually pay me out of his pockets in TNA wrestling. So like I said, I can't speak highly enough about the Mouth of the South. Such a
awesome.
good guy.
Absolutely. I remember going to his bar slash restaurant in Daytona Beach when it was there. When he
Okay.
had it. Yeah, and it's no longer there, but I
Ah,
just, but he would always, like, I'd ask him for a photo, and he goes, "Yeah, absolutely." He'd give me an 8x10 and he'd autograph it, and then he let me pose with an Intercontinental title. So like,
yes.
it's so cool. And yeah, like,
Yeah.
when you walk to there from the lobby, you'll see like old WWE posters and everything, old wrestling posters, and just to get to his bar. And he's such a great man. And like
Yeah.
you, like, I would do, like, when I was with Clive, I worked for free as well because I was his apprentice, and I said, "Don't pay me with money, just pay me with knowledge. That's all I ever want."
Yeah.
And
I
then
like that.
every once in a while, he'd like give me like a Christmas bonus or whatever, and like autograph stuff for free or for me. And like, I have this really cool box set of Hellraiser, and he autographed it and he gave it to me as my Christmas present. I'm like, this is so cool. So
Oh man.
yeah, so
Ah,
like sometimes the best thing in life is like, like, money can't buy happiness,
yeah.
and that's what I didn't want. And that's why I lasted like 3 4 years with the guy. So um, but for LA, you have to have like 4 jobs, and my day job paid for everything, and like, I
Yeah.
got to cover concerts at nighttime and live on the Sunset Strip most of the time, and I got to be his apprentice for the other. And it's like Tetris. You got to create your own fun, and the pieces have to fit. You got to make
Yeah.
them fit.
Yeah,
So
there's this quote. It's gonna sound funny. It's from Nick Cannon, believe it or not, but it's a quote I love living by. Is Money doesn't make me happy, but happy makes me money, and
Absolutely.
live by that. Because I work in happy, like I work for Universal Studios, I work at SeaWorld, I do stuff at Disney. It's all happy, fun, like MC work, like hosting work, and yeah. But my happiness makes me money, so live by that. Money does make me happy. Happy makes me money, and it's still true to this day.
Absolutely. I love watching Nick Cannon's interviews too. Like his most recent one was fantastic. Like I was just like watching me. Uh, oh, there's a comment on here. It says Isaiah Marshall. Put me in the link. He says. I don't know what that means, but do you know Isaiah Marshall?
I don't think so. Where's he based out of?
Oh, Isaiah, where are you based out of? Dean wants to know. So, but yeah, he commented like a minute ago. So he'll
Okay.
watch it and he'll respond. But yeah, I love watching what he's doing with Wild and Out and like putting all his friends on and I have my festival shirt called Stress Fest on here or my alter ego does. And so like it's kind of I put my friends on and like it's just like with storytelling and podcasting and music and comedy and I have one in Colorado, one in Daytona Beach. So I bring all my buddies on. It's like money is great and all, but what is it? What does it do good if you don't know how to invest in your own community with it? Like
Yeah.
and that's what I do. Is like I pay it forward. Like everyone that ever gave me a shot, like on
Yes.
stage, I bring them with me. I'm like this is my way of karma, like tenfold, positive. Have fun, get paid, do what you love, and
Yes.
network and grow, build your network. And I'll bring everyone to us, so you don't have to go to them. And so it's like
Yeah. Yeah. I do the same thing. If I pay it forward, like a lot of the younger performers that are here, because I've been in Orlando for 19 years, worked at Universal for 19 years, but I know so many different forms of entertainment: stand-up comedians, wrestlers, actors, singers, dancers, you name it. And if I meet a young performer, I'll like connect them to some of these veteran performers in their field, because I love connecting people. I feel like one of my three purposes on this earth is to entertain, to serve, and to connect. And connecting is my favorite. I love connecting people and paying it back. Like younger performers, like I came in, I didn't know anybody. Now I know almost everybody in the entertainment community when it comes to theme parks in Orlando. So now I want to be like bring people, in, especially good energy people. If you have good positive energy, I want to help you even more. Bring you around some of veteran like magicians, or like I said, even going back to pro wrestling, like Simon is a wealth of information, and he's an indie guy, but he learn from the best. And I would love for him to be a guest on your show. I'd love to give Simon your info because you would love Simon Says. He also does like a radio show at Rollins College, with Curtis Earth Trivia, and he's a great talker, great speaker. You could Now he's a wrestling historian. You want to talk wrestling? You could ask him, hey Simon, who was the main event of WrestleMania back in 1995? And he'll yeah, he'd be a fantastic guest for your show here when it comes to wrestling, because we're bringing it back to wrestling here, because it's just an amazing how once again working in wrestling and all these opportunities kind of came out, kind of blossomed from wrestling, and then meeting all these people and meeting stand-up comedians and meeting all these other like actors and performers,
absolutely.
Alex from Child's Play, because of wrestling, so it's weird how a lot of this kind of comes back to wrestling, which I didn't see come. Once again, I never saw myself working in the wrestling business. I didn't even have a goal. That was just Forrest Gump, right place, right time, right place, right time. They said that the energy you put out, the energy you get back in. So I guess whatever I put out came back tenfold and got me this fun, paying job for TNA wrestling. In addition to my other jobs, so I work Universal, and I work Disney, and I work TNA. Like I worked a lot of jobs, but it was fun job. I didn't feel like I was working, and I'm still doing that now. I work Universal and SeaWorld. I work 6 days a week, but it doesn't feel like work because I'm emceeing, I'm hosting everywhere, I'm doing the things I love doing, and I'm getting paid pretty well doing it now. But it's fun, work. But when especially when you start making more money in your career, You realize they're paying you for your expertise. All your years of experience. You know, that's why we do it for so long. You kind of make it look easy. He was like, "Oh man, I could do that," and then they get him trying to do it. They're like, "Oh, I don't know what to say." And they're like, "Yeah, this is a craft. We're crafting this. It seems casual and off the cuff, which it can be at times, but we've been doing what we do for years to make it seem like we're just kind of having a casual talk, but it's a crafted, craft, a work. As I say in the wrestling business, it's a work to make it seem natural and normal. But yeah, now we're getting paid. I mean, the stuff I did for TNA wrestling, like just pumping the crowd up. Same thing I kind of do with the show I'm doing at Universal called DreamWorks Destination. It's a new meet and greet dance party with DreamWorks character. It replaced the old Barney show, but I'm at MC pumping the crowd up, getting them excited to see these characters, to see the Kung Fu Panda, to see Poe, and to see the trolls. You've seen Poppy and Branch and Guy Diamond, and seeing Alex the Lion, getting people excited for King Julian and the Penguins, and same way I get people excited for TNA wrestling. And also I'm the warm-up host at the Dolphin Adventure at SeaWorld. So I'm getting a stadium of like 3,000 people, how many people I have, excited to see these dolphins. Same energy I started with TNA wrestling, I'm applying to all my other things in life. So they really, helped me build my chops to be able just to talk to crowds, and then also recruiting an audience, just talking to people one on one and talking to crowds one on one crowd, so I could do a little of both. And once again, I owe a lot of that to TNA wrestling. Like to this day, it still helps me out.
Absolutely, 100%. And shout out to Brother Nero, Willow, Jeff Hardy, and I'm so glad that he reunited with Matt Hardy on AEW. And they're supposed to be
Yeah.
at River City Con in Jacksonville, and River City Wrestling Con, and I'm gonna plan on going there and seeing all those cool cats up there, and hopefully I can snag some interviews and all that good stuff. And it, like you said, with you meeting so many stand-up comedians and connecting people, and that's one of
Yeah.
your three things to that you brought courage for. Like, shout out to Marcus Crespo for connecting me up with the
Crespo. Crespo's
improv.
besto.
Absolutely, because when we first met, I remember I don't normally remember like meeting people for the first time, but when we first met, Marcus was our connection, and he goes, "Seth, you gotta interview Gene like at least once," and now we're on number two, and I'm so glad our friendship grew from Crespo, and I'm the DJ at the Trinidad Guys Club in Daytona Beach, and whenever he performs stand up there, I just tell people, "Hey, we're gonna treat this like a pro wrestling event. You tell me what music you want to come up to, get you pumped, get you excited, because we kick it off like DX style, like like the chops and everything, and announcements and everything, and then I'm my music is most random, but his music is wrestling themed. He goes with "Sexy Boy" by Shawn Michaels, like his theme music, and it's so beautiful. Like it's just like everyone gets excited and pumped because I wanted to treat it like the improv. Like you pick your song that it gets you excited and gets you going and walk up to the stage and kill it and destroy it. Like just tear the walls down like the walls of Jericho. Just
Walls of
break the walls
Jericho.
down. So it's like this is just the best. Like we try to make it the best stand up comedy open mic or show ever in Florida. So and that's where it's at, really. To be honest with you, I've been
Yeah.
everywhere, but we try to make it special for everyone because like we can say anything we want. It's like shoot wrestling, like dropping pipe bombs, like CM Punk. It's just like
Yeah.
it's like the only city that can you can get away with saying stuff, and if people get offended, like there's a door, like there's
Yep. Yep. See your way out. Yeah, that's a Crespo. Like he is like a force on stage. He is like just like incredible energy. I was supposed to see him a couple nights ago. He's in Orlando, but I had to be up super early for a gig at Universal. But I hope to see him again soon. But that, like, yeah, he's a big wrestling fan. He brings that wrestling energy to stand-up comedy, and we're talking about just a force. Here's a fun part. Me and Crespo, we were connected by now famous comedian Preacher Lawson.
Ah,
Preacher Lawson introduced me and Crespo, and this was before Preacher became, America's Got Talents. Preacher Lawson, but yeah, we all met at the Ale House on I Drive. It was Preacher, Akeem, I want to say Preacher's brother Justin, and a couple other people. But me and Marcus started talking, realized we both worked at Disney. He was security at the time, and we had a mutual friend by the name of Michelle, who's now in South Korea teaching English. But anyway, Michelle was out there in Disney, so we realized we knew the same people. And me and him were like, hey, we should probably hang out more. But we have Preacher Lawson to thank us for. You just never know who's going to connect you. And now, like I said, he's got a special out on Amazon Prime and all that. But yeah, but Marcus Crespo, man, he's one of those guys too. Like I talked to him recently because I saw him a month or two ago. As far as giving back, because he's part of the Jacksonville scene and younger comedians, he gives advice, or anybody who'll listen, who'll take his advice. He's more than happy to take the younger comedians under, because he's now the seasoned vet of Jacksonville. He's now in that position to let them know, hey, here's how the business works. Here's how things can go good for you. Here's how it go bad for you. Here's the choices you can make, kind of thing. So I'm glad to see like Crespo is out back and back at it again, and just like I said, he's just a force of nature on that stage, and I'm so glad he introduced us. So this is such an amazing opportunity, and I always love talking to you.
I always love talking to Teacher Union, and like I'm so glad you brought it back to Jacksonville, where AEW is formed, and where you can go to Jackson City, the River City Wrestling Con, and I plan on it's a really cool wrestling scene there, and Crespo also has a lot of wrestling knowledge, and
Yes,
and I love talking to him and getting absorbing everything comedy and wrestling with the guy, because it's just he's an amazing guy, and so for this next act is next part of the show is if you mentioned that I should interview Simon Says for the show because he's a wrestler and worked with Jerry the King Lawler
yes,
and Big Papa Pump and
yes.
and so
He was trained by the Dudleys
trained by the Dudleys that was also in the match with Jeff Hardy, Matt Hart, the Hardy Boys, and
and
Edge and
Edge and
Christian.
Christian.
And I love how everything's weaving together.
It all comes back to each other. Yes, it does.
Absolutely. So,
Amazing.
which other four folks with Simon Says it can be an independent wrestler, promoter, pro wrestler. It'll be kind of tough to get pro wrestlers on the show, but I'll work on it. So I'm trying to be
Yeah.
like Ron Funches and Chris Van Vliet and Renee Paquette. I'll try to be like them and bring some wrestlers on too. But which other four folks would you like to see on the Raised on Wrestling show?
That like I know, or
Yep, that you know, or that are
oh yeah,
your dream interviews.
yeah. So for wrestling, who like I said, I talked to, of course, Simon Says at the top of that list is somebody that is like just a go to, just a solid person. Um, like other people connected to wrestling, I have a friend now. I like, I guess, a lot of the behind the scenes people. So I got a buddy of mine. His name is Ryan Jevic. Ryan Jevic he was a producer at TNA Wrestling. He was the one that produced a lot of the segment behind the camera for a lot of the segments at TNA, and he's currently working at AEW. He's AEW working backstage there, and he's like, can tell you some very cool stories. Like he's traveled with TNA a few times, so he's had some travel stories. I don't have travel because I didn't travel with TNA, so he has some good stories there too. And I talked to Ryan at least a couple times a month there, so that's some good names there. So like behind the scenes, who else? There's I'm trying to think of some others that like I talked to. There's somebody that I'm saying I'm blanking on his name right now, but as far as when it comes to like wrestling and the things we did at TNA and some of the people like I still talk to. Um, I was gonna say there was one of the refs that in it, but he's actually moved to I think back to Chicago, but I haven't talked to him in years. But we used to hang out all the time. But But at least, yeah, like the top two on my list, off the top of my head at the moment, Simon Says, and from TNA, Ryan, like one of the producers. Those are the two guys I'm in constant contact with, um, as far as the wrestling connection. But when it comes to others, as far as like comedians, I would love to see like from the locals, like James Yawns, the Ken Millers, Mike Hurley, Tight Mike, um, all those guys I'm in contact with because a lot of, especially James Yawn, Tight Mike, and Mike Hurley, they actually have a talk show called The Lowdown, which is filmed here in Orlando at Afrotainment Studios. And you actually would be a good guy. Have you been on The Lowdown before?
I haven't. No, I've been on Real Laughs before to promote my
Okay.
improv, but that was about like a couple years ago.
Yeah, because James Yawn now has, if you're ever promoting anything, uh, I actually can get you on a show because I'm in constant contact with him. And he was like, "Hey, we've known each other for a while. If you have anybody that's talented and has something to promote, let me know. I have a platform, so we can even do some cross, promotion, or to get you on the lowdown to help promote this channel you have here for wrestling and get you open to a wider audience." So, and of course, you already know the comedians. You already know Hurley and yeah, I mean, you already know how comedians are a tight group, and as much as you're a good interviewer, I'm sure you're a good interviewee. And James Yon, he's a funny guy, he's riffing, and you as a comedian, you could take it. That's the good thing about James Yon. You're just having fun, having
Absolutely.
fun. Just whatever you say, he'll turn into something funny, and so that's something I would like to see. You know, like comedy and wrestling goes hand in hand.
It really does. And
You never think so, but it does. It does.
like off stage, I feel like the face, and then on stage, I feel like the heel. Because
Yeah,
like I finally get to turn into the bad guy, and like I found my voice in stand up like 4 years in, where I say really naughty things without saying any curse words, and so it's really
that's good.
fun.
That's
And
that's so funny you say that. So one thing I love about Simon Says, he can cut some of the most brutal, meanest promos and won't have to cuss one word. Like it's clean, it's brutal, it's not nice, but it's clean. I just clean. He doesn't have to cuss or use vulgar language, but he will like eviscerate you verbally with some of the most creative insults you have ever heard, and it's just you know a sight to behold. Like he could be a stand up. He has like it's funny because it terrifies him. A stand up is scary. Of course, you know that. Because I mean, he can talk, but there's a difference between talking and getting material together, getting 5 minutes and creating something out of nothing, and figuring out an audience, figuring out what makes them laugh, what doesn't make them laugh. How do you work a room? What material do you use for this crowd? What material for this crowd? Okay, I'm not going to say this because they're not going to get this. I will say this. There's like an art to it. I mean, he does it with wrestling. He already does that with his promos, and it's almost parallel. Like he could do it, but because he can make people laugh, but he makes people laugh through insulting. But he also could be. He's also self-deprecating. That's the thing too. Even though he does cut heel promos, he also will make himself look bad. Just kind of give you that relief that he's kind of pointing his finger at you, and then he'll like slip on a banana peel kind of thing, or that kind of so it's that give and take where he'll eviscerate you, but then he'll like trip over his own feet or trip over something. So it's not. So it's that give and take. So it's not like man, he's obviously flawed, but he's giving you the business like he's perfect, and then all of a sudden do something, and then he'll look at you like shut up, you didn't see that, or one of my favorite things. It doesn't make sense, but it's so funny. He's like, "You shut your mouth when you talk to me." So whenever he says that, it's like, just, yep, You got it. Yeah, he's known as the Emperor. Simon says he's the Emerald Emperor. His colors are green, so the Emerald Emperor. So when he was cutting promos with Jerry Lawler, he's like, Jerry, I'm going to show you that an emperor is greater than a king. I'm like, okay, okay. So he's got it. Yeah, he got it. So yeah, I'd like to see like Simon, and then like all these guys. I'll think of some others, but yeah, and get a cross promotion maybe with James Yawn, and maybe get some of the comedians like said like Hurley and Ken Miller, and it would be great to see Marcus on here, and like just like all the people, all like kind of the behind the scenes, the people you wouldn't normally think would be on a show like this when it comes to wrestling and or comedy. But when we talk about supporting local, supporting the independent, just like independent wrestlers, we have our local comedians that are amazing at what they do, and we get to be friends with them. And with a case like you get to work alongside. You get to be on shows, doing what you do. You kind of guess the quiet assassin that you are, that kind of the sneaky, low key. That this guy's quiet, and then just packs a wall up like, where did that come from? Okay,
I
yeah,
kind of look like Shinobi now, so it's
like a
like.
ninja, yeah, like a ninja.
And if I take the mask off, I look like a Ninja Turtle. So it's like,
Oh, from ninja to Ninja Turtle. You're like, go ninja, go.
which has like Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello, and
Leonardo all at once.
all of my masks. So
So now you need Master Splinter. They're like,
indeed.
there it is.
This is from my favorite restaurant, the Rainbow Bar and Grill out in Los Angeles. And like Lemmy would go there for Motorhead and a bunch of other rock stars. They would go there. And they would always remember my drink when I walk in the door. So it's like, Arnold Palmer, sir? I'm like, yep, absolutely. So I would,
Arnold Palmer.
yep, that's my favorite drink. So, because I don't
Yeah.
drink alcohol. I'm like straight edge, like CM Punk. So I
Straight
don't,
Edge Society.
absolutely. So I don't do any of that other crazy stuff. But my comedy album is called Sex Jokes and Rock and Roll. So I play off sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So it's really dirty material without any curse words for like
Yeah.
25 minutes, and I throw on like a bonus hidden track to make it 30. So it's a
Ah.
fun one. So but man, and also picked like three pro wrestlers that you'd like to see on this show. Just a dream matchup would be awesome.
Oh, you know what? I just realized though. I said this earlier. There's a wrestler I'm connected to that I could probably get on your show, and I mentioned him earlier. Robert Stone from NXT.
Oh yeah, Robbie.
Rob, yeah, Robbie E. He was my roommate, and he's super cool. He's like, hey, whatever you need, let me know. And if I had to connect you to Robert Stone, I'm sure, he could probably connect you to some NXT guys. We probably like I'm not sure who's on the roster. There's so many releases with NXT. I don't know. I haven't been to NXT in a while, but I know Robert Stone is there. But but that's somebody I could definitely at least connect you to if he has some time set aside because he runs a gym out in Baldwin Park and he has kids. But I'm sure he can set aside, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes to be on a show to probably talk NXT and probably promote his gym, whatever, because he's always promoting, fitness because he's still a fitness guy. And his wife, she's a personal trainer. So that would be good to get you in contact with the Robert Stone brand. And you never know, you might be part of the Robert Stone brand. He might end up taking you under his wing. He's looking for clients, you will.
That'd be awesome.
So
And
yeah, that would be
he would be my second ever famous wrestler that I've ever interviewed because the thing that kicked this whole thing off was Buff Bagwell. Um,
Buff,
yeah, so I
Buff
interviewed him.
Daddy.
Yeah, he's the stuff. And I interviewed him at the Chernog Irish Pub because he was in town for Wrestle Daytona, and he needed to have a place to have his podcast. And they messaged his buddy, his podcast partner Michael, posted in the Orlando comedy scene page because he was supposed to be in town for AEW Revolution, and I'm like, why don't we bring it up to Daytona where the NWO was formed, and bring it back full circle? He goes, oh, we won't be back until we're just gonna be in Orlando, and then he comments again. He goes, we're actually gonna be in Daytona for Wrestle Daytona. Can we? Is the offer still on the table? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so that's how it all worked out, and it was so cool to like go back and talk about their podcast and everything like that, and talk about all the old wrestling days. And so there's like two episodes. One's like there's a rebuilding buff for Michael and Buff for their channel, and then I
Okay.
interviewed them for my channel, and it was just it's called Pause at the Nog, and I have like live podcasting at the Nog like every last Monday, but we'll try to move it every Monday just to fit schedules for people because I'm really easy working, like easy to work with. I'll like if you need to
Yeah.
change it to this Monday, let's do it on this Monday. And it's kind of like Monday Night Raw and Monday Night Show all over again, and it's fantastic. So but hardly anybody shows up, sadly. But I just do it because I want podcasters to bring their fans out there and meet them in person, and just like you did for like Alex and Jeff Hardy and many others for the teenager with the Jeff Hardy shirt on his back and everything like that. That's when
Yeah.
I want to be the connector for those folks, and well, hopefully it picks up because like some of those Monday nights are like dead, but
Yeah.
it's always a process, but I got to trust the process and believe in it.
Trust
It's
the
been around
process.
since December, and we'll see where it goes. Because like live events are the best, and I'm glad we're back live again.
Yes.
Awesome. So Gene,
Happy.
thank you so much for being my guest on this episode of ROW. Are there any final words you'd like to give to the audience at home?
No, just thank you for tuning in, listening, watching, however you're seeing this. We appreciate you hanging out with us. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. I mean, my social media, I mean, on Facebook, I'll accept anybody, Gene McGee. My Twitter is at Gene McGee. I'm hardly ever on Twitter, but whatever you are. My Instagram is meme Gene McGee. It's mostly for communications. I barely post, yeah, I just my final words. I always like to say I live by the book of Bill and Ted. So my final words are: be excellent to each other and party on.
Absolutely. And shout out to Mean Gene Okerlund. And I'll put that in the description box below. So it's Mean Gene.
Yeah, meme like memes, meme Gene McGee.
Oh, Mean Gene McGee.
Because
You
I used to
got
post
it.
a lot of memes,
Ah,
but yeah, meme Gene McGee, like kind of wrestling ish, but
indeed.
not mean, but meme Gene McGee.
Absolutely. I'll update it. It won't let me update it now, but I'll update it for sure after in post production. And also shout out to Gorilla Monsoon. I believe that's why they named it they
The
named it the group.
gorilla,
Yep,
yes,
yep. So I had to plug that in there. And oh man, I'm so thankful for your time and for being
yes,
my guest. And I'm so glad that we got to reconnect after all this time. And hopefully they'll be my guest on my show, and I can help promote them and cross promote them and all that jazz. So
absolutely.
for ROW Raised on Wrestling, I'm Strathney, and for Dean McGee, thank you for tuning in. And I'll piece this together for you, Dean, and I'll put it on my website, and you can share that. I'll do that when I get home because I got to do a comedy show in like 40 minutes at
Oh,
Madcap's Comedy. So um,
Also, I was gonna say, one of my catchphrases. I always start off all my shows with "I'm Gene McGee, and you're in the place to be here with me." So that's like my tagline for all my. So you say Gene McGee in the place to be.
yep. Great tagline, just like pro wrestling is real, people are fake.
Yes. So
Bring
mine is
that
Gene
right.
McGee in the place to be.
Absolutely. We'll leave off on that one. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dean. You rock, dude.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome.